me otherwise. Which one do you want to be? It wasn't a rhetorical question. The wise, that's right. In case you were wondering who that little girl was who was hugging on me, that is our granddaughter, Callie, and it's great to have her with us today. Callie's 10, yeah. And she's spent the weekend with us, going to have lots of fun at the all-church picnic and baptism bash and all of that, so it's just great to have her today. Hey, let me mention real quick about Royal Family Kids Camp. It's a wonderful ministry to foster care kids. You may not be familiar with it. Some of you, I'm sure, are. And it's a wonderful way to impact the life of a kid that has probably faced things that no kid should ever have to face. And so I just invite you, if you have not signed up to be a part of our Royal Family Kids Camp, we need lots of people to serve. The more people we have served, the more kids we can have. And so there's not a shortage of foster care kids. So I encourage you, you can go to our website at bethel.org and you can /RFKC and you can sign up to make a difference in the life of a foster child. Well, hey, we had a great vacation last week. For those of you that noticed we were gone, you may not have noticed, but we were in Iowa, and my wife, you may not know this either, was born in Iowa. So she was born in Iowa Falls, lived there for the first 11 years of her life, and we were in Iowa Falls, and we watched the corn grow all week. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. Slept a lot, rest a lot, visited a lot of her family, and we had an absolutely great time, and it's super great to be with you today. So possibly you've heard this story, maybe you've read this story, but it's about a manager who was managing the wealth of his boss. His boss was very successful, and over time, he got kind of sloppy, and he got kind of lazy with the way that he managed the wealth of his boss. So he wasn't very wise in the way he got it. Well, his boss caught wind of it and met with him. Long story short, he told him, he said, look, I'm sorry, but I have to let you go. You're just not going to be able to work here any longer. Well, the manager realized that now time is of the essence and it's time to get moving. And so he reasoned in his own mind. He says, well, wow, I mean, I'm kind of a white-collar guy. I'm not really good at some of those blue-collar work. I'm not good maybe at being a laborer. I'm not going to beg. So he sprung into action, and this is exactly what he did. He contacted some of his boss's clients, and he talked with them because they owed him money. They owed the boss money, and he talked with them about, hey, how about I cut you a killer deal? How about I reduce what you owe my boss? And then he thought to himself, well, if I do that, maybe when I'm out of work, maybe they'll help me out. You know, maybe they'll come along and welcome me and help me when I'm unemployed. Well, that's exactly what he did. In fact, as the story goes, he reduced one of the clients to his boss. He reduced what he owed by half, another one by 20%. And there's a crowd that's listening to this story, not just this crowd today, but a crowd 2,000 years ago when Jesus originally told this story. And they're all listening intently about what's going to happen next. Because they're all thinking in their mind, here comes the proverbial shoe to drop. Wait till that boss finds out that this guy has reduced his clients what they owe him. This guy's toast. He's done. He'll never work in this town again. He'll probably be thrown in jail. So you can imagine the shock, the rumbling in the crowd when Jesus shares the point of the parable. When he talks about this is what I mean by this story. Remember, parables are parallels. What does that mean? They reflect or parallel eternal truth. Every story that Jesus told tells us something about the way God views life, what he thinks about life. It's eternal truth. And so this is how Jesus ended his story. In Luke chapter 16, verses 8 and 9. Let's look at it this morning. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly or wisely. For the people, Jesus says, of this world are more shrewd or wise in dealing with their own kind than the people of the light. I tell you, Jesus says, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. It's really easy to misunderstand the story that Jesus told. Is he commending dishonesty? No. This story isn't about honesty. It's not about ethics at all. We often think it might be. This story, Jesus describes a dishonest manager. Don't miss that. A dishonest manager. This story is all about the spiritual activity of diligence. Diligence. In fact, the story teaches how we should make the most of what we have with where we're at. In particular, this parable is contrasting parable. In other words, Jesus is contrasting the use of money merely to meet temporary needs, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's not saying that's wrong. But Jesus is contrasting the use of money, which is temporary, to meet temporary needs versus using worldly wealth, that's Jesus' words, worldly wealth, to impact people for eternity. So that one day when you go to heaven, there'll be a sea of people, many whom you will not even know, and they will come up and they will thank you for giving so they could hear and respond to the gospel. It's exactly what Jesus is teaching. It's another reason why, as Pastor Ryan mentioned earlier, the tithe or our missions offering. That's why it matters. The end game is people in heaven. The end game of giving back is people in heaven. The dishonest manager is commended for being shrewd or for being wise. And Jesus says the people of the world are a lot sharper when it comes to this activity of diligence than people of the light. Wow. That's why diligence is such an important theme in Proverbs. We're in this summer teaching series. If you're a guest today, those of you online, welcome. Those of you at our Santa Clara campus, a big shout out to you as well. But we're in this summer teaching series, The Wise and the Otherwise, and we're taking 10 themes through the wisdom book of Proverbs. We look at wise diligence today and why it matters. Let me give you a couple of anchor scriptures for today. I'm in your outline as well. There's an outline. If you got a bulletin, there's an outline there. Those of you online, you can go to notes. If you're on the Bethel.org platform, if you're in Facebook or YouTube, there should be a link in the chat, and you can find the notes there. All right, Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 11. Let's look at a couple of Proverbs to kind of set the stage for where we're going. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler. Verse 8, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. Verse 11, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. And then let's look at Proverbs 26. Similar words. A sluggard says, there's a lion in the road, a fierce lion roaming in the streets. Well, I can't go out there. As doors turn on its hinges. So a sluggard turns on his bed. A sluggard buries his hands in the dish. He is too lazy to bring it back to his mouth. A sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 people who answer discreetly. This is a fascinating study. And word, sluggard, we don't use that word today. It hasn't been used in a long time. What does it mean? A person who's lazy. a person who is uninitiated, a person who is unwilling to do what they should do when they should do it. I mean, the word sounds lazy, doesn't it? Let's just say it out loud. Sluggard, right? Sluggard, right? Always think of slug, right? That's what comes to mind. When I see this word, every time I read it in Proverbs, I think of slug. What's a slug? It's a snail without a shell, right? Slugs move slow. They move really slow, and they do damage to your garden. In fact, I've often thought back in Genesis chapter 7, when Noah built the ark of safety, 2 by 2 animals coming into the ark, because God would flood the world, he could have done a huge favor for all garden lovers and squashed the 2 snails, and it would have been over. Why are slugs allowed to survive? Because God had a purpose for them. And God has a purpose for all of us who sometimes struggle with sluggardly behavior. What you'll find in this teaching is probably all of us, at some point in some area of our lives, struggle with sluggardly behavior. So I want us to look at the path of the sluggard. It's how you walk the path. It's part of the unwise path, okay? It's part of the otherwise. But I also want us to look at the priority of diligence, okay? So let's jump into it today. Again, I'm in your outline. There's some fill-ins there, and you can follow along. First of all, the path of the sluggard. And there are 3 things that Proverbs, you can probably do more, but 3 for sure. The one is excuses. From these verses that we've already read. That'll put us on the path of the sluggard. As far as excuses go, Proverbs 26 and verse 13 is one whale of an excuse. Let's look at it again. The sluggard says there's a lion in the road, a fierce lion roaming the streets. Wow. And then we'll not look at it, but Proverbs 22 actually says the same thing and then adds another excuse. Oh, if I go out there, I'll be murdered. It's another top 10 excuse. Do you find yourself excusing things instead of addressing things in your life? Instead of giving attention to things that need your attention. If there is a lion in the street, then it's time to go lion hunting, okay? Even when we look at certain things in our life and they feel so big, like they feel like giants in our life, even in the face of things like that, and we say, where do I start? How do I change? Even in the face of things like that, Proverbs encourages us to take diligent steps to solve whatever the problem might be in our lives. Because God is a giant slayer. We don't have to do it alone. Number 2, procrastination. Now, I filled that in your outline because it's a super long word. Procrastination. It's another path of the sluggard that the sluggard takes. Now, I don't think I put it in your outline, but Procrastinator's Creed, I think I got it out of Bill Hybels' book, Making Life Work. Got lots of great ideas out of his book, by the way, because it's on Proverbs. And here's just some of the Procrastinator's Creed. I can't remember. We do have it up here. Okay. I believe that if anything is worth doing, it would have been done already. I will never rush into a job without a lifetime of consideration. Procrastinator's Creed. If at first I don't succeed, there's always next year. I shall always begin, start, initiate, take the first step, and or write the first word when I get, say it with me, around to it. In case you wondered what around to it is, there's one right there, okay? Around to it. Boy, oh boy, don't we like round to it's, right? We all do. In the face of this kind of thinking, the proverb writer boldly shouts from the rooftop, Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6 and verse 9. Don't miss it. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. Verse 9, how long will you lie there, you sluggard? How long? How bad does something have to get before I will address it in my life? How bad? Before I'll take a step towards solving some of the hurting areas in my life. Remember, the purpose of Proverbs is to convince us to take the wise path. And you'll use all kinds of creative and sometimes confrontational, over-the-top language. It's on purpose. It uses that language to convince us to take the wise path, to move away from folly and step towards wisdom. Number 3, complain and blame. That's another part of the path of the sluggard. Complain and blame. Easy to do. Frustrations and difficulties and fears. Man, life's too hard. I'm too busy. It's too much. I'm so frustrated. On and on. These types of things are exhausting at times in life. Would you agree? Yeah. Sure. They're just exhausting in life. Certainly true over the last 16, 17 months. Frustrations, things of that nature. I mean, we get frustrated sometimes. I know I do at times. Over things that we cannot change, things that we do not like, and things that we wish were different. And so it just frustrates us. Sometimes life is just really hard. Difficulties. And we all have them, and we all get it. And sometimes in cultural Christianity, not biblical Christianity, but cultural Christianity, will sometimes convince us that everything ought to be great, that heaven ought to be on earth. And it's not. It's not. I will never forget many years ago of a family, precious family. This was many years ago from our last church when we were candidating, and they had a Q&A time, and a family stood up. And he was probably from my wife to me. And they had a severely handicapped child. And he looked at me and he said, Pastor, do you believe that it is always God's will that people are healed? I said, absolutely. It just doesn't always happen in this life. Beware of the short look and not taking the long look, because the Bible always takes the long look. Always takes the long look. So, anyways, difficulties. I mean, we all get it. It's not easy. This life is not easy sometimes, and God will use those difficulties. He will leverage them for good. He's the only one I know who can do that. But he won't prevent all of them on this earth. Then there are fears. They're the what ifs in life. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if, right? There are lots of what ifs in life. The sluggard says, what if there's a lion outside? What if? What's your lion today? What's your lion? Are you afraid of admitting something? Are you afraid of facing something that you should admit and face? When we find ourselves complaining and blaming and in the face of these types of things, and it's easy enough to do, we'll miss the wise path. We'll miss it. The sluggard often points to everything else but him or herself as the problem. Proverbs 26 and verse 16. Look at it again. This is an interesting verse. A sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 people who answer discreetly. Discreetly is a powerful word in the Hebrew language. Discreetly speaks of a person who is discerning and sane. They are sane. In other words, the discreet person sees the obvious answer. It's an obvious answer. The implication here of the proverb writer is that the sluggard acts without sanity. That they actually don't see what every wise person does. That it's obvious, but it's not obvious to them. I never want to be there, right? I never want to be there. This is in your outline. I hope you'll post it today on social media. Those in the online, you can even put it in the chat. I think it's important to put it in the chat today and talk a little bit about it. The wise and foolish paths are always proven by what they produce. They're always proven by what they produce. This is why we're encouraged to pursue diligence. That's why it's a spiritual activity. We focus our energy and we focus our attention on the stuff that we can do. There are things that are out of our control. Then there are some things that are within our control. We need to act on those things. So I want to leave you briefly today with 4 things that diligence brings huge payoffs in life. And if we neglect diligence in these 4 areas, then it really does bring huge regret, okay? There's more than 4, by the way, in Proverbs. I'm going to just give you 4 so we have time for today. For example, I'm not going to talk about how diligence addresses how we take care of our body. Proverbs does talk about that, what we put into our body. Okay? We're not going to talk about that today. Not going to talk about the importance of diligence when it comes to our vision and following hard after the revelation of God. Moving forward in the revelation of God. The truth of God. Moving forward. Proverbs talks a lot about that. We're not going to talk about that today. Okay? In fact, I don't even have it in your outline, but if you want to write it down, some of you know this verse, Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, the people perish. NIV says, where there is no revelation, people cast off restraint. They go in every which direction. Proverbs talks about diligence there. We have a vision statement, 5 vision statements, in fact, and they're in your outline. I'm not going to read them today, but they're in your outline. I hope you'll look at them, because this fall, if there was ever a time to be at Bethel Church, every Sunday matters, but this fall is really important because we are going to unpack a series on faith. In fact, I'm going to call the series Bethel Now, a story of daring faith. And we are going to drill down deep into what biblical faith looks like and how it helps you accomplish the things that God wants to accomplish in and through your life, and how it helps you and I and Bethel Church accomplish the vision that God has for Bethel's life. It is going to be a super important series. Yeah, I am so pumped about it already. Already reading, already beginning to just gather some information. I just believe it is going to be a Bethel Now series. It is going to be such an important series for us, especially as we come into our 75th anniversary, which, believe it or not, is a year from this November. We're already working now. We're already working now, church, on what that's going to look like. What does it mean for us? What does Bethel Now mean for us moving forward? Okay, I can't talk any more about that, but it's going to be great. 4 areas of diligence, okay? Let me just leave you with these briefly today, all right? Huge payoffs. The priority of diligence, Proverbs 6:6-8. Look at it with me today. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. The encouragement is we can be wise, even though we battle with some sluggardly stuff, okay? It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer, gathers its food in harvest, okay? So let's talk a little bit about it. We can learn something from this little bug that we step on the sidewalk, called an ant. What's the big deal about the ant? Why does Proverbs say, look at the ant? Because the ant does what is necessary when it is necessary. That's diligence, okay? The ant plans ahead for life-giving activities, in this case, food. Otherwise, the ant will starve in winter. We all face times of winter, even when it's 90 out. There are winters in our own soul. There are winter times in our own families, in our relationships, at work. We face those dark and those chilling times. Are you in a winter time in your life right now? If we invest into these 4 areas, it will help us thrive and not starve when we do hit the winter months in life. Okay, let me give them to you today briefly. Number 1, be diligent with your family. Be diligent with your family. We're going to take an entire message in this series on Proverbs on family, so I'm not going to stay here long. But many of us, when we hear the word sluggard, and we hear about those who are either uninitiated or lazy, those kinds of things, it's real easy, I know this, it's real easy to say, well, that's not me. That's not me. I'm no sluggard. I'm not uninitiated, no laziness here. And so a good question to ask those closest to you is, do they see it that way? Are you safe enough to be around where your family can speak truth in a spirit of love? Or will you give 50 excuses of why they're wrong? It's important to understand. Be diligent with your family. Again, in his book, Making Life Work, Hybels coins this phrase, selective sluggardliness. Selective sluggardliness. What does that mean? Well, when I look at my life, I say, you know what? I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing good in a lot of areas of my life. And so maybe an area or two over here, I give it a pass because I'm not doing very good over here. But hey, look at over here. Like all this over here. This is really good. And so I give a pass over here. I don't pay much attention to it. It's the student who does great athletically but doesn't take seriously their studies. It's the dad who sets records at work but is not emotionally available to his wife or his kids. It's the Christian who was at church, at the physical campus, or maybe online, faithfully, every time the church opens, they are faithfully here. But they are unwilling to address areas of neglect in their life. Oh, they're here, but they don't attend to the areas of neglect in their life. We say, well, 8 out of 10 is not bad. I mean, I got 8 really great things here. Beware, because Proverbs teaches that 1 or 2 things of neglect tend to be the ones that eventually unravel your life. They keep us from the wise path. Marriage and family is one of those areas. It's a critical area. It's easy to drift, so be careful. Be careful. And I just invite you today on each one of these to just rate yourself. I know that can be painful. 1 is I'm in trouble. 10 is I'm stellar. And then you can figure out the rest. What are you today? Are you a 5? Are you an 8? Are you a 2? Rate yourself. Number 2, be diligent with your work. Proverbs addresses this. Be diligent with your work. And by the way, in your outline, I've given you additional scriptures that you can study on your own. Sometimes work can be one of these areas of neglect. It's easy to do. 4 million people quit their jobs in the month of April. 4 million. They're calling it the great, what is it? You guys know it. I just forgot it. Forgot the word. But not the Great Recession, the Great, yeah, everybody knows it but me. The Great Resignation, yeah, the Great Resignation. It's being written about now by experts. People are checking out. Sometimes work can be a neglect. My example at work, how I work at work, how I serve through my local church and elsewhere matters to God. It matters a lot. Proverbs 12 and verse 24. Take a look at it. Be diligent hands will rule, but laziness ends in forced labor. What does that mean? The one who works well gains influence. The one who slacks ends up being ruled or managed by others. When I do what I say, when I show up on time, when I exceed expectations, when I pay attention to details and I'm a problem solver and not a complainer, my influence grows and greater opportunities sooner or later will come my way. And for the one that doesn't, then they end up losing those opportunities. Most importantly, my influence for Jesus grows. And it gives me opportunity. It opens up windows and doors where I can share some of my faith journey with others. Beware of slacking off in a God-honoring work ethic. So where are you? A 1, I'm in trouble. 10, I'm stellar. Somewhere in the middle. Number 3, be diligent with your money. Be diligent with your money. Money is not only one of the top topics in the New Testament and in the teachings of Jesus, it's also one of the largest subjects in the book of Proverbs. One of my favorite places is Proverbs 3, verses 9 and 10. Let's look at it. This is out of New Living Translation. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the best part, or the first part. That's the first fruits, literally, that Hebrew phrase, the first fruits of everything you produce. Then he will fill your barns with grain, your vats will overflow with good wine. In other words, there'll be plenty. Put him first. A couple quick thoughts on wealth. However much or little you have, by the way, as a typical American, we are rich when it's measured by others in different parts of the world. We are wealthy. But however much or little you have is a gift from God. God's entrusted it to you. You get to manage it for a little while. That's why we're commanded to honor him in this proverb. To honor him with it. Well, how do we do that? Manage it wisely. What does that mean? You might want to write down just a few thoughts. Don't be greedy. It's not me first. Not that I don't take care of myself. I'm not saying that. But don't be greedy. Express gratitude every day and be specific. What are you grateful for? It's one of the healthiest emotions, or the healthiest actions that breed healthy emotions in a person's life. Gratitude. Give back to God faithfully. It's another habit. We already talked about that. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about the tithe, the first fruits, but also missions. Share with others in need. These are important ways to use money or our resources wisely. How diligent are you in this area? Do you find yourself making excuses, procrastinating, complaining, or blaming? Because, well, that's why I don't give back. Okay. That's why I don't give gratitude. Okay. Just know there might be some selective sluggardliness going on in your life. Number 4, be diligent with God. Be diligent with God. Proverbs 23, verses 17 and 18. Let's look at it. Do not let your heart envy sinners. Don't follow after them. But always be zealous or passionate for the fear of the Lord, the worship of God. Be passionate about that. There is surely a future hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off. Proverbs is encouraging us to order our affections correctly. I'll tell you, man, there is nothing I work harder at than this. It is so easy to get off track. I'm just talking in my own life. To order my affections, to order my love correctly, making sure that I'm loving God first and most. And I got to come back to that again and again and again. Be diligent in your love for God. It's work. If you love your spouse and you've been married like more than 10 minutes, you know love is work. Come on now. Love is work, right? Yeah. You don't drift into a deeper love. And so this is what the proverb is. Be zealous for the worship of the Lord. Be zealous for the fear of the Lord. How do we do that? Well, we do it through prayer, and we do it through our worship, and we do it through studying the scriptures together, reading the scriptures on our own. Man, God just put his finger on an area in my life during this last week, and I'm working myself, right now I'm reworking myself through Psalm 119. There are 3 great Psalms that speak to the Word of God: Psalm 1, Psalm 19, and Psalm 119. Psalm 119 is the longest psalm out of all 150 of them. And they celebrate the Word of God. And as I began to read through that again, I said, oh my word, I've gotten sloppy here. I've not given the Word its due, its proper weight. So I'm working through Psalm 119 again. I just encourage you to develop in that passion for the Lord. Wisdom begins with a relationship with the one who is wisdom. That's why I said when I kicked this whole series off, wisdom starts with worship of the one who is wisdom. It starts by worshiping him. Where do you need to be more diligent today? What area or areas of your life? How are you doing with your worship for God? Is it a 1? Is it a 10? Where are you? What do you need from Jesus today? I'm going to invite you to stand. And I want us just to, we're just going to sing part of that song one more time. And I just want you to make it a declaration of worship, of fearing the Lord, and ask him to come and ask him to give you what you need in this moment. Let's worship him passionately today.